Welcome back to Gender-Affirming Voice 101. This is Part 8, Your Frequently Asked Questions. Hi, I'm Renee, and I'm a Gender-Affirming Voice teacher. This is the final part of my mini-series on the basics of Gender-Affirming Voice. Please follow, save, and leave a comment so you don't miss any of the parts in this series. Over the past 7 parts of this series, we've talked about vocal anatomy, pitch, resonance, vocal weight, and so much more, but there are always so many questions that remain, so today we're answering those. Question number 1. If I start voice training, will I always have to be thinking about my voice, or will it feel natural? This is a really great question. I think I said great question. Let me start again. This is a super normal fear to have. It's something that everybody expresses when they're starting because at the beginning, it takes a lot of brain power to be creating a voice that brings you safety and comfort. So much brain power that it can be hard to think about other things. It can be hard to listen to people. It can be hard to imagine what you want to say. It's totally occupying all of your brain's resources. But over time, voice training will become a new habit, just like your old voice is a habit. And then it will go on the back burner of your brain. You'll think about it less, and you'll be able to work on other things like ideating, creating, listening, problem solving. And I even made a resource to help with this transition from thinking all the time about your voice and trying to get to thinking about it less. And it's called the Practice Games book for trans voice work. Practice Games for Trans Voice Work. I think I used to call it Cognitive Load Games, but nobody knew what that meant. But you can find that in my freebies library. So yeah, don't worry, eventually it will become a habit, just like your voice now is a habit. Question 2, how much time will I have to dedicate to practicing and for how long? Ooh, this is a great one. How long does this take, Renee? And how much do I have to practice? So how much you have to practice, it really depends. It depends on you. It depends on how much you already were using your voice. If you were, for instance, a public speaker who had a really ingrained speaking habit, it might take you longer than if you live alone and you work from home and you don't speak that much. So how much you have to practice every day really depends also on your abilities and your time. What I will say is it's more important that you practice a little bit frequently. So if you could do like 5 minutes 3 times a day, that's better than doing 1 hour once a week, even though it's like less time effectively. The more we ingrain that habit over time, the better. And then in terms of how long it takes to complete, well, it really depends. I will say that most people can grasp the basics in a very short time, like within 1 to 3 months, depending on if they have experience with their voice before, if they're a singer or not. But when it becomes a habit that you fully don't have to think about, like we were just talking about, that can take a lot longer. I see anywhere from like 1 to 5 years. So some people are working at it for 2 years before they feel happy. Some people 5 years before they feel happy. It can take a long time. Unfortunately, that's kind of the nature of the instrument. But just remember, the time is gonna pass anyway. So you might as well voice train. Question number 3, if I do voice training, will I lose the ability to use my old voice? And then in addition, can I voice train if I'm not out as trans in my life? So if you work on creating a new voice, you won't necessarily lose access to your old voice. I know a lot of people who are not out, they want to work on training, but they have to use another voice in the office or with their family for safety. That's totally fine. It's effectively a type of code switching, right? To switch between the voice that brings you comfort and safety and the old habituated voice. And this is something you kind of do all the time anyway. Like I always say, you don't talk to your boss the same way you talk to your dog. You have 2 distinct voices. So it's very normal to switch between voices, but it might be something that you have to practice so that you can do it more easily and more fluidly. There are some cases of people who only spoke in their target voice for so long that they do find it hard to access the old voice. But that's usually because they haven't been trying to access the old voice. They've been only focusing on the new voice. So if accessing the old voice is important to you, just make sure you're continuously working on both. Question number 4, I can't stand listening to my voice. Do I have to listen to recordings in order to voice train? Oof, that's tough. So yes, it's common knowledge that it can be helpful to listen to recordings of your voice, but this is mostly so that you can get a sense of your progress. You can assess if you're improving over time. But I would not say that it's necessary. It's not 100% imperative that you listen to recordings of your voice. In fact, this is such a common issue that I created another way of assessing progress, which is the Trans Voice Emotions Evaluator. And essentially what this does is it evaluates your feelings towards your voice every day. And this allows you to assess if you're getting happier over time or more content over time, let's say, without having to sit down and listen to recordings of your voice, which can bring up feelings of discontentment and make you feel like you're going backwards. Instead, you can just once a day reflect, how did my voice make me feel? If you didn't have any negative or positive experiences with your voice, you can kind of just rate it neutral. And that's a good, actually. We don't have to be elated about our gender. I know gender euphoria is common, a common phrase, but gender comfort and gender neutrality and just gender being okay a little bit is also fine, right? That's also a very valuable goal. So the Trans Voice Emotions Evaluator can help you see those trends over time. Whereas if you're not looking at it every day, you might overemphasize a negative experience. And that's another thing that's available in my freebies library, which you can check out right now. Question number 5. I'm trying to decide between voice training and surgery. What is the better option for me? Great question. So you may not be aware, but there are different types of voice feminizing and masculinizing surgeries, and they are a great option for some people. I can't tell you whether surgery or training is the better option for you, or hormones, depending on your goal. But I will say that most surgeons will tell you to try training first. And this is because there are very little risks to voice training, and there are associated risks with surgery. So some people will try training for a little while, and if they're happy, great, they don't need to have surgery. But if they're not happy, then they can go on and have surgery. I will also add that a lot of people who have surgery will also need to engage in a voice training practice after to relearn how to use the instrument. So training, it's never a bad thing to get into how your voice works and how it feels, because that way when you do have surgery and you're preparing for that, you will have a sense of how things felt before, and you'll have a good idea of how it feels differently after. So there's never a bad reason to voice train, in my opinion. I might be biased, however. And question number 6. I don't know what I want to sound like, but I know I'm unhappy with my voice. Can I voice train if I don't have a goal in mind? Wonderful question. So yes, I often say listen to voices that bring you joy, that inspire you. But if you don't know what you want to sound like and you don't have a goal, voice training can still be a wonderful practice. It can be exploratory. It can help you to determine the bounds of your voice. You might not even be aware of all the ways in which you are already using your voice. Maybe there are some aspects of your voice that do bring you gender euphoria or gender comfort, and you didn't even know until you did this voice training. So yes, I would say even if you're not heading towards a specific goal, definitely get into training. Try it, explore, see what feels good, and maybe you'll surprise yourself. So that is it for my mini series on the basics of gender-affirming voice. If you missed any of the parts in this series, I'll have dedicated playlists on all my platforms, as well as a tag on my blog that you can check out. If you have any remaining questions, please leave them in the comments, and I hope this helps.